Salute. This particular chamber right here was inspired by my partner, Rob, aka Bobby Woods. Shout out to you. But today I want to speak a little bit on this term we call perspective. And I know everybody has their own perspective on how they see things. And before I delve too deep into perspective, keep in mind that I'm not talking about perception. Perception deals more with, our five senses, more so what we hear and what we see. Perspective deals with more of what we see, but more from a cognitive, a mind's eye perspective, your first eye. And so the question that I want to pose to the family out there is, I know we all have our own perspective, but is there a certain thing called a universal perspective? We all know that there's things out there called universal principles. A few of those is, eat, sleep, shit, and procreate. Those are universal principles right there. That pretty much all living and breathing species practice that. Whether you're a human, or whether you're a reptile, a mammal, doesn't matter. So, when it comes down to perspective, is there a universal one? Because if there's universal principles that we all live by, is there a universal perspective that we could all see things through? And the quick answer is yes. Now, I'm not a religious individual, but I do have a religious background. And so I've studied different belief systems and things of that nature. And most belief systems all have, a common perspective on how this life should be lived. And so in this modern day, the most common access to these universal principles that each one of us have access to or have read through is the Bible. The Bible has many universal principles in it, but you don't have to be a religious person to understand that. You can observe the stories and the tales and the fables and the folk tales in the scripture and see things played out through those narratives. And so, in my personal opinion, from the little bit of study that I've done, the best way for people to adopt a universal perspective is to follow the life of Christ. No, I'm not telling you to be a Christian. No, I'm not telling you to join a church. None of that. But what I'm saying is there was a saying, a real cliche saying that people used to say all the time, and it was, what would Jesus do? WWJD. Meaning, in whatever situation that you're in, what would Christ do in that situation? And if you understood the mindset of Christ, then you also understood, what that whole philosophy meant. So in my personal opinion, The closest example that we have to a universal perspective is looking at the life of Christ. Not necessarily the teachings, but the life. What would Jesus do? Not what would he say, not what would he think about. What would he do? What would you do? Because I believe that our own personal perspectives just keep us more divided. I believe that our own personal perspective keeps us more separated. There's a lack of unity because I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to see it my way. And if you mute out every other perspective, every other angle, then how could you really have a good picture of what's really going on? Perspective is just different angles of looking at the same thing. You know, for a person like myself, you know, that's passionate about cars, you know, and customizing cars, you know, before you customize a car, you got to look at it from a whole lot of different angles and figure out, you know, how you want this car to look. You know what I'm saying? When it's coming down the road, how it looks from the backside, how it looks at an angle, all those types of things. Those are all different perspectives that you take into account. And so if we're not looking at all of life situations from multiple perspectives, then we don't come out with the best picture. We don't come out with the best outcome. But we've been taught and trained how to just look at things, you know, through a narrow box, and not to look outside that box, not to look around the box, not to look over the box. So think about that moving forward, because this perspective thing is fucking up a whole lot of things right now. It's creating a whole lot of disorder. If people can't see eye to eye on certain issues in certain situations, because everybody got their own perspective, then we'll never come to a common ground. We'll never move forward. You can't move forward if you keep failing the test. You can never have better. You can never get promoted if you keep failing the test. And from what I'm seeing, by us all having our own perspective and not a universal perspective, we never see eye to eye and we'll never move forward. So keep that in mind as you live your life, as you move forward. Yeah, we have our own perspective, but when it comes to the forwarding of mankind, of humanity, we have to have a universal perspective. All right, family? War.